Looking to the week ahead, tomorrow morning I will be releasing the New Zealand Income Insurance Scheme discussion document. This is the social unemployment insurance work that we've been undertaking alongside Business New Zealand and the Council of Trade Unions, and that discussion document will be released tomorrow morning. David Clark will be making an announcement around spectrum allocation in the afternoon, and tomorrow the government will also provide a vaccine update. On Thursday, the Prime Minister will give a speech outlining our plans to reconnect New Zealand with the world. Today, Cabinet met to discuss our ongoing response to slowing the spread of Omicron. While we remain in the early stages of an Omicron outbreak, and we know from global experience that cases will continue to grow, we have proven twice now that New Zealand has the right plan to get us through. We've been in the red setting of the COVID-19 protection framework now for just over a week, and we're making good progress in increasing our vaccine protection. In the last week, we have seen a 24% increase in people getting boosted. 67% of those who are eligible are now boosted. As we move forward, we must be prepared for further spread, many more cases, and in a quicker time frame over the next few weeks. The government is preparing for a move to phase 2 of our Omicron plan, as we announced last week, where we start integrating rapid antigen tests into testing to ensure a return to work program for critical businesses. To that end, today I can announce that the government has secured the delivery of enough rapid antigen tests to help New Zealand deal with a widespread outbreak in the coming months. Last week and over the weekend, the government has been in contact with a variety of rapid antigen test manufacturers. Those efforts have resulted in securing an additional 36 million tests for delivery over the next 2 months, which corresponds with a predicted rise in Omicron cases. These additional 36 million tests are on top of the 12.9 million orders already confirmed for delivery in February. Along with the 5.1 million tests already in stock, New Zealanders will have access to over 50 million rapid antigen tests in the coming 2 months. An additional 87 million rapid antigen tests have been ordered through to June, which will allow for regular and widespread testing to occur. In total, 123 million rapid antigen tests are on order, and work continues to bring these orders forward. Modelling on the use of rapid antigen tests through the outbreak suggests that during the peak, we will likely be using 9 million rapid antigen tests a week, which is the equivalent to testing a quarter of New Zealand every day, or all of New Zealand twice a week. That scale of testing will go a long way to reducing the risk of an infected person going to work and infecting others, and will help with keeping critical services and supply chains open and moving. In the past week, 2 more types of rapid antigen tests have been approved for use in New Zealand, bringing the total number to 11, with several more going through the approval process. It must be noted here that the Ministry of Health and ESR continue to only approve tests that meet a very high threshold for quality. There is significant global supply constraint at the moment, so the government is working alongside businesses to assist with ensuring that orders are met. To be clear, businesses bringing in their own rapid antigen tests can continue to do so and use them how they like. We are doing all we can, working alongside business to ensure that as much of the economy as possible can stay open, while continuing to reduce the spread of Omicron that has placed enormous pressure on health systems overseas. Our plan aims to avoid this in New Zealand. I'm happy to take your questions. Cheers. Well, as Minister Hipkins said yesterday, there is a place in MIQ for the type of situation that Charlotte Bellis is facing. And in fact, there is a secured place for her with a flight arrangement alongside it that has been communicated to her today.
So she can be offered her a spot today?
That's correct. The Ministry of Business and Innovation and Employment have offered her a voucher today, and they have a flight arrangements, which obviously I won't give out today, that they have set up with her.
Is it appropriate for the government to have told publicly that she had been offered consular assistance without asking for their permission to do so?
I note that Ms Bellis and her lawyer say that they're considering legal action on that matter, so I'm not going to get myself involved in that. The important point here is there is a place in MIQ for Ms Bellis, and I urge her to take it up.
Just following up on that, does that send a message though that if you make a pass and go public, you will get preferential treatment?
No, it doesn't. What it sends a message is that the staff of the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment who have to deal with emergency applications are dealing with very difficult and challenging cases on a daily basis. They always try to make contact with people and try to make arrangements that work. That has been consistently what they have been doing over the last couple of weeks to support Ms Ballas through the application process. And in each circumstances, the specific set of circumstances that a person faces is taken into account. So in that regard, Ms Ballas is no different.
Did the government ask for her permission for discussing details, putting details of her case into the public hearing?
As I say, I've noted in the media that Ms Ballas and her lawyer say they are considering legal action on that matter. I think you'll understand that I'm not going to involve myself in that. The situation we have today is that her case has been assessed. There is a place for her to be able to return to New Zealand, and I urge her to take it up.
Minister, the Privacy Commission says a minister should only release personal information that an individual has not already made public or if the individual has clearly authorized such a disclosure. Ms Ballas has said she didn't authorize such a disclosure. So this is a clear-cut case, isn't it? You've breached her privacy.
As I said, I'm repeating my answer again, Jason, but I will do it for the third time. Ms Ballas and her lawyer say that they're considering legal action around these matters, and therefore it's not appropriate for me to involve myself in them. If you want to seek further comment from Mr Hipkins, you're welcome to do that, but I suspect his answer will be very similar to mine. Yes, Amelia.
Her apologies for how she's being treated in this instance.
What I know is that officials at the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment have worked very hard to support an outcome here when Ms Ballas can return home. There are rules and criteria. There are many, many people who are trying to find their way back to New Zealand, and I have enormous sympathy for people in a number of different situations. One of the hardest things during COVID-19 has been the fact that people have not been able to come back for funerals, for weddings, for situations like the birth of children. That's incredibly tough. We've had our MIQ process in place for a very good reason. It has supported our public health response. It has avoided a number of deaths, but that doesn't make it easy for people who are at the other end wanting to come back to New Zealand. MB works hard to make good decisions here. They continually communicate with people who apply. That's what's happened in Ms Ballas's case, and there is now a place for her. Barry.
Ms Ballas's lawyer is representing about up to 30 women, pregnant women, in the same situation. Are they now going to be given MIQ vouchers as well?
Well, I don't think I'd accept the fact that people are necessarily in the same situation. There are specific circumstances for Ms Ballas that have been taken into account by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. I can't possibly comment on the circumstances of 30 other people. I do know that they work hard to be able to make sure that people who have emergency situations return to New Zealand.
Do you feel it's a woman's right to come back to New Zealand if she's a legal Kiwi citizen to give birth to a child in this country?
Well, it's a similar situation for everybody with MIQ. We all want people to be able to come back to New Zealand when they choose to, when it suits their circumstances. Unfortunately, during COVID-19, that's not been possible. The government's taken the view, and I think most New Zealanders have endorsed the view, that we should do all we can to keep COVID-19 out of New Zealand while we get ourselves vaccinated, while we get ourselves boosted. That means really difficult decisions have to be made on a daily basis, and these cut across huge number of circumstances. Because we have an understanding that there are medical situations, there are personal situations that need exemptions, we have emergency allocations. Then there is a process to go through those. I appreciate for people that it can feel bureaucratic or it can feel frustrating, but that's because MB's dealing with so many different applications. In the case of Ms Ballas, there is now a place for her in MIQ.
We'll
just do there and there.
On rapid antigen testing, can you categorically state say that absolutely no private orders will be affected by the government's action.
What, as you'll note in the press release that Minister Nzherald has put out today, you've got the assurance there from one supplier with Abbott that did not occur, that orders have been dealt with as they've been put in, and that is the process that we're working through. You'd have to give me a specific example, but from the information we've been given, orders are being processed in the order in which they were made.
And has Cabinet made decisions about reopening the border today?
So Cabinet's had discussions about reconnecting New Zealand, and as I noted in my introductory remarks, the Prime Minister will be speaking about that on Thursday. Down the front here.
Thank you. Will there be priority for Māori providers for the RAPS rollout? And secondly, will there be additional support for Māori whānau to isolate with Omicron so they don't have to isolate in cars and sheds?
Well, we certainly wouldn't want that occurring. And as we announced in October last year, $120 million has been set aside both for the vaccination campaign, but also to work alongside Māori health providers, Māori social service providers, to be able to support whānau if they do need to isolate. So part of that funding was allocated for that reason, and I know that ministers are working through with agencies at the moment how we can best provide that support. On the matter of rapid antigen testing, we're working through that process at the moment. Obviously, our first priority continues to remain keeping utilities going, emergency services, the food supply chain, but we are also conscious of the need of supporting social service providers to be able to support those communities who are vulnerable.
So it's the Māori providers that go into those deep areas and supply Rāwhiti, as an example, and they're the ones that will reach those whānau. So will they be prioritise those Māori providers?
So we continue to work with Māori providers who have done a superb job through COVID-19. The role of rapid antigen testing we have to be careful about what it's for. And for us at this stage in the process, it is about making sure that we can manage a situation where contacts need to go to work, and therefore we use rapid antigen testing to satisfy ourselves that those contacts do not have COVID. As we move through the process, there will be a wider distribution around rapid antigen tests, and equity issues will very much be part of that.
What are you hoping general public will be able to get access to this?
Well, that will come with time. Our priority at the moment is making sure that utilities, keeping the lights on, keeping water services running, the food supply chain, those continue to work. And I think everyone will understand that should be the priority. We've looked at what happened in other countries where that didn't occur and it caused major disruption. Over time, as supplies increase, no doubt there will be a wider availability.
Because you did say in your opening remarks you're expecting another 87 million tests coming in later in the year. Is that the point where you start to widen it out, or would that still just be enough to cover those critical industries?
I think as we move on through this, you will see a wider range of people having access to rapid antigen tests. But bear in mind, this is not about a business being able to operate per se. It's not about people being able to go about their business. This is about dealing with a specific set of circumstances around contacts and making sure that those contacts can continue to go to work. We will, in due course, make further announcements about the way that we see that. But equally, people themselves, as we move through this process, will be able to purchase them. I'm not going to put a time on that today, though.
Will you be supplying schools with rapid antigen tests?
Well, again, similar. It's in the same category. At the moment, the particular focus that we've got is around the contact issue and making sure that we have critical services provided, emergency services provided. We're not in a position right now today where that is needed, so we do have the space and time to be able to work through where schools fit, alongside what I would suggest might be some other high-risk settings that we might need to work through, such as aged care facilities.
And just confirming they're going to be free for everyone.
We made that commitment.
Henry. We've spoken to a number of teachers who got the visa to come to New Zealand from overseas as part of the 300 teacher announcement last year. You can't give them a new spot in the terms already begun. Principals are expertise and maybe using the leaders. Looking back, would it have been smarter to link those visas to the United States?
I understand, Henry, that you're going to be getting a response directly from Minister Hipkins's office on this question. What I can say more generally is that visas have don't usually have a particular time limit to attach to them, so therefore an MIQ spot won't necessarily be attached to a visa spot. What we have tried to do is make sure that where critical workers are needed, that we prioritise them, but I'll leave Minister Hipkins to give you the detail on that.
So there's not a traffic system. Currently there's no real distinction between indoor events and outdoor events, despite the fact that you're much safer at an outdoor event, even though a lot more people than say an indoor event with 99 people, which is allowed under the control. Has the government considered at all trying to put those up to incentivise people to do things outside and just focus just the money?
That isn't advice that we've received from the Ministry of Health. The red traffic light settings were put together with the Ministry's advice, and they didn't at that time advise us to do that. I think the really important thing is whatever setting you're in, that you continue to do the basic public health measures that underpin the framework. That is, wear a mask, keep social distance from people that you don't know, make sure you practice good hygiene. Those are the things that, will fundamentally support and protect us, but we simply haven't had the advice along the lines that you're suggesting. Claire. We'll go Claire and then you, Peter.
New Zealand is reportedly cancelling flights because so many of their staff are now in isolation and they can't keep up their usual schedule. Are you looking at bringing companies like that into the RAT scheme earlier than phase 2 if it gets too bad for them?
My understanding is that Air New Zealand is already operating a rapid antigen test system using the stocks that they have in order to deal with exactly the issue you raise.
They truncate isolation services because of it.
I see what you mean, yeah. No, we haven't had that request come through to us. We've been in pretty close contact with Air New Zealand. I haven't heard that they believe they're in a situation where they need that. Were they to ask us about that, we would obviously take the advice from the Ministry of Health about it. Peter. We'll just go to Peter and then.
Will vaccine passes be upgraded to show the booster status of the person?
This is an issue that the Ministry of Health is working through. Clearly, when they were established, it was designed to deal with the 2 doses. There is some specific changes that need to be made to them in order for them to show a 3rd shot, but I do know that the Ministry is working on that.
Mr. Robertson, can I ask you about Sir Ian Taylor, who wrote a column last Friday that it would seem that these 20 million rapid antigen tests were facilitated by him. He said that the government, if they had moved 8 weeks ago, when the offer was first made, all the supplies, that 20 million would be here already.
Oh, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and see whether we're talking about the same 20 million or not, Barry.
We're talking about the company that you contracted today.
Yeah, as I say, I'd need to make sure whether we are talking about exactly the same thing there. Look, I've been in correspondence with Sir Ian and met with him as well. He's a person who wants to make sure that New Zealand emerges through COVID strongly, and we've been working very closely with him in recent times. I think the government has moved quickly and rapidly as we've altered our own strategy to where rapid antigen tests now fit. If you think about it, in the elimination strategy that we were operating, PCR testing remained the most important way that we could deal with COVID-19. As our strategy shifted, the Ministry of Health began ordering rapid antigen tests. So I don't think I'd accept that part of what Sir Ian is saying. Amelia and then Bernard, yeah.
The OECD has again said that New Zealand needs to raise the age of super, and National Leader Chris Luxon has said that he supports the policy of raising it to 67. Will a Labour government ever increase the age of super?
No, we won't, and we've made that commitment. There are a lot of reasons for that, but first and foremost is that for many New Zealanders, even reaching the age of 65, when you're in manual labour in particular, it's tough. And we think that there's a commitment that we've made, a social contract, if you will, with New Zealanders to make sure that they have dignity in retirement and support in retirement. I recognise that there is a cost associated with that, but that's the priority decision that we make. As an economy, I believe we can afford that. If you're asking me in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, I'm not going to answer for that, but for the Labour government that stands here today, our commitment has not changed.
And would you consider sort of changing the structure of super? So, for example, the idea of using it as a universal basic income and then taxing other incomes above it. Is that something you would consider?
No, that's not something we've put any focus on at all. Bernard.
Would you consider lowering the...
Sorry, we're just going to do Bernard and then we'll come back to you.
Minister, the OECD said they were worried about a possible sharp drop in the housing market. Would the government act to ensure that didn't happen?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot of forecasting, speculation and comment in the OECD report, and so I tend to, listen to that, but also listen to what we see from forecasters here in New Zealand, the Reserve Bank, Treasury and others. They are not forecasting the kind of sharp drop that you're talking about. They are forecasting a drop over the course of the next year or so. As I've often said, our position is we do want housing to be more affordable and that we will take action to do that, but I haven't seen anything in the forecasts that we rely on here in New Zealand that would cause me to intervene in that situation.
Do you agree with the 47% of people in one News Kantar poll who said they wanted to see house prices fall a lot?
Yeah, I think what's important there is that the message I get from that poll is that New Zealanders want housing to be more affordable. They want people to be able to buy their own home and live in their own home, and they want to make sure that the price of housing reflects that value. That doesn't necessarily translate to people wanting the value of their own home to drop. And so I do think we've got to be a little bit careful about polling questions like that. Regardless, we share the aspiration of New Zealanders that we want more people to own their own home. It is a long journey to come back from around 30 years of the way in which our housing market has gone in the direction it has, but we believe we're undertaking the things that need to be done in that space.
The party leaders have been calling for a reduction in the age superannuation because of our lifespan. Has that been a point of discussion for the government?
We haven't done investigation specifically into that during this term of government. Previously, when the Labour Party has been putting its policies together, we have looked at a variety of equity issues built around superannuation. In the end, we came to the decision to leave the settings as they are, not as we've heard today the National Party and others would prefer to see that rise. So we've made the decision not to alter those settings.
Minister, did Cabinet today make a decision around the borders?
Cabinet a paper was discussed at Cabinet today, as is often the case when it comes to Cabinet decisions. There are things that need to be followed up from that, and that will be done. Okay, because on Thursday you said that there is a speech about opening up New Zealand. Cabinet has met today, so can we read into that Cabinet has made a decision and it's going to be announced? I'm not going to. You can read into whatever you like, Jason. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there will be a speech on Thursday on reconnecting New Zealand, and as you would expect, we discussed all aspects of the Omicron response. And has the government or Chris Hipkins sought Crown law advice over the privacy of Charlotte Ballas? You'd need to ask Mr. Hipkins that. Are you aware of it though? No, I'm not.
Is the average asking price of $1 million for a house affordable? If not, should house prices go down?
Well, as I've said, we don't believe that the price inflation we've seen in the housing market in recent years is affordable, and so we have been taking actions both in terms of the supply side, building more houses, we've got record consents, and on the demand side to be able to dampen particularly investor and speculative demand. I've often said, I don't sit here saying I want house prices to go down by X%. We set the criteria, we set the rules so that we can have a more affordable housing market, and that's what we're working towards.
Would you be worried about a drop though?
As I said, there's drops forecast by both the Treasury and by some economists at the moment. That is the nature of the housing market, and some of the changes we've made, some of the changes that the Reserve Bank has made. I'm not expressing a view either way on that. What I am, and I answered Bernard's question before about not intervening, we're trying to set up a stable housing market in New Zealand, and we've put the rules in place that I believe will both help do that and make housing more affordable, but it doesn't happen quickly.
So the OECD today also pushed back against Kiwi savings. Savings being used for housing deposits, residential, that's probably driven up house prices a lot. Would you ever pull that away from people as an option, or is that?
No, we have no intention of doing that. And, I genuinely respect the reports that the OECD does when they do their country investigations. They're very thorough, but they are also quite consistent in their advocacy for a number of policies that the government has committed that we're not going to do, and we certainly aren't going to be taking that one up.
Minister, Tāmaki Māori, Ministry of Health, Tāmaki Māori vaccination rate has Māori at 18% and 33% for non-Māori, but Māori statisticians have it at 16% for Tamariki Māori and 40% non-Māori. Why is there such a big discrepancy?
I really don't know the answer to that question. I'm very happy to go to the Ministry of Health and find out for you what they would have as an answer to that. Those percentages, while there is a discrepancy there, it's not wild, but it is significant, and so I think it's a fair question for you to ask, which I will follow up. One thing.
The reasons why the Ministry of Health won't release data because there are these discrepancies?
No, that's not the reasoning that the Ministry has expressed previously, and as you know, they are working with whānau order providers. What I was going to say was that one of the things I'm extremely proud about is the way in which the Tamariki Māori vaccination campaign has been a co-design process, and I'm really pleased with the way that the Ministry of Health has worked with Māori providers, worked with Iwi Chairs Forum, worked with the National Māori Health Coalition to design the way in which that program is rolling out. And so I think over time you will see those vaccination rates rise considerably for Tamariki Māori, and I think we've actually learned a lot of lessons from the way that we've gone about the whole vaccination campaign that's now informing what I think is a really good co-design process.
Minister, what will you do about inflation? What will you do about inflation in the months ahead? Last year's domestic inflation for non-tradables was 5.3%, which is higher than China, Australia, Japan and South Korea.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously for all New Zealanders, the rising cost of living is a concern. But even when you dig into the tradables, non-tradables split, you still see things that have significant international factors within them. So one of the things within non-tradables is around housing, and we know that the building supply issue is a global supply chain issue. So I don't think it's as easy as to say we can control something within the non-tradables environment in the way that you might be alluding to. What I would say is that if we were to take, and bear in mind, I think more than 70% of the latest quarterly inflation increase comes from two things. One, the broad housing area, which contains a number of different elements, and the other, transport, which is clearly driven by oil prices. I'll finish, John. Is driven by oil prices. If we were to try and intervene in the housing side of that, what you would be asking us to do potentially is slow down the build of state and public housing. And I've stood here before and been questioned about why we're not doing more of that. So I don't think the answer lies here in the government stopping doing really important projects for the future of New Zealand.
So you're saying that New Zealanders should just continue to expect this sort of level of inflation, and so for how long?
Well, the Treasury's projection is that from the first quarter, the end of this first quarter, that it'll start to decline. You've already seen that in the sense that in the December quarter, we had 1.4% down from 2.2% in the previous quarter, and the projections are that that will begin to improve. But I'm not diminishing the significance of people needing to deal with rising prices. That's why we continue to look out for the incomes of the lowest income New Zealanders to make sure that they can afford what they need.
Minister, on inflation, in other countries, some of the blame has gone to companies with a lot of pricing power. In America, they're looking to tighten up on the monopolies. How much of a factor here do you think building materials, supermarkets and other sectors have driven the inflation as they've used their power and all the other inflation around it to take advantage and put up prices and profit money?
You'll see from the actions that we've taken with the Commerce Commission inquiries that these are issues that have drawn our attention and are of concern. We did one of those with the fuel industry, and while the burgeoning oil price globally has seen fuel prices increase significantly, we have seen some control around the fuel margins as a result of the work that we did there. When it comes to supermarkets, that inquiry is underway, and we do want to make sure that we do that properly and thoroughly. As it happens, I think building supplies would be another great topic for the Commerce Commission to dig into as well. So yes, there are concerns there. Do we have all of the evidence? Not right now, because that's what the inquiries themselves are about.
Just finally on housing affordability, how are you going to get to an affordable housing level, whatever that is, without a big drop in house prices.
As I say, the forecasts that we're seeing now from the likes of the Treasury and a number of banks do see drops in house prices. What we've always said is that we will set the rules to try and make house prices more affordable, whether that involves a drop of the kind being forecast from the Treasury or not. How do we do it? We do it, unfortunately, over a long period of time, because it takes a long time to build up the stock of houses that we need, because we inherited such a large deficit in that stock. But we're making progress in that regard. We do it by, on the demand side, making sure that we, for example, remove foreign buyers from the existing home market, by making sure that we don't allow advantages to speculators. It has to build up. The Reserve Bank has its role as well, which obviously they're continuing to work on too.
Is this market now too big to fail? You can't afford for it to drop quickly, so you're going to essentially sentence another generation of first-home buyers to having to wait decades and decades before it gets affordable.
No, I don't accept that in terms of the overall premise of that. We've taken a number of actions to make the housing market more affordable. We will continue to work on those, and we will continue to make sure we build more houses. This is a problem decades in the making that unfortunately is going to take some time to solve. Yep, just come over here.
Have you got an update or further advice around shortening the gap for boosters?
I don't have anything to update on that today, no.
How much does that play into the decision around reopening the border when you still have New Zealanders and some of them vulnerable Pacific and Māori communities who can't get the booster as of yet? How does that play into the decision?
Yeah, look, when we made the decision to push out the time in which we would move to people coming here with self-isolation, one of the big factors was to see an increase in the booster campaign. If we use the 4-month figure, it's around 82% of New Zealanders will be able to have their booster by then, but it is something that we keep continually under review.
Did you consider price freezes, Minister?
It's not something that we're considering. I think that kind of action is one that would have a very, very dramatic effect. It's the kind of control in the economy that we saw in New Zealand in the early 1980s, and it can have very, very significant and negative effects. What we're focused on is making sure that we lift the incomes of the lowest income New Zealanders so that they can maintain their standard of living.
Minister, when will you release a list of people who will be able to take a test to get out of isolation and places to them free of the Omicron outbreak? And do you envision private media
asking for a friend, Henry? Look, that work's underway at the moment, and that's on the timetable that was outlined by Dr. Verrill last week. In terms of your specific question about the media, while a decision hasn't been made on that, my own view is that similar to what we did during level 4, we need a wide variety of media being able to undertake their work. Bear in mind, and I think this is a really important point, what that regime is about is making sure that if you are a contact, you can be tested and then still go to work. It's not about a business being able to operate. Businesses will be able to operate. This, however, gives them assurance if people do become contacts that they will be able to use rapid antigen tests. My own view is we need a strong media presence throughout our time in COVID.
How have you modelled that you need 9 million tests a week if you don't know how many workers will be needing them?
That's the model. It will be based on a predicted number of workers. I can get that for you.
Just the Prime Minister's COVID scare might be emblematic of what is to come in terms of Cabinet. Could you just let us know what sort of plan is either in development or has been formed if one of the members of Cabinet does go down with COVID and have to isolate? Will that mean that you all have? And if so, have you got the facilities to be able to still meet as a Cabinet if that happens?
In answer to the last part of that question, yes. And as we did today, and as we have done many times over the course of the last 2 years, Cabinet has used virtual forms to be able to meet, and hybrids where some people are in a room and some people coming in on Zoom. So we have the facility to do that. All Cabinet Ministers have the facilities to work from home and perform their jobs, as indeed the Prime Minister has been doing in the last few days. Beyond that, to wider planning, there is thought going in at the moment to how we might manage that, and we'll have more to say about that when any decision gets made.
So what about,
but it hasn't been made.
So specifically Parliament itself?
Slightly different matter, yeah. Parliament itself, and I believe Parliament's Business Committee is probably meeting right about now, and I'm sure they'll be going over arrangements that the Speaker has in mind for that.
Minister,
last one, Bernard. Yep.
9 million rats could be used as pests Does that imply that at that time people in the public would be able to...
Obviously, it's a much wider group of people that would potentially be able to use that. The final decisions around how we allocate those, though, will depend on the way in which the outbreak emerges and evolves. But clearly, it's a wider group of people than the more narrow critical worker group we're talking about now.
And can you say at that 9 million, what sort of cases per day that would be?
As I say, I'll actually go back and I'll get some more detail on that modelling for you so that I can give it to you rather than trying to recall all of the numbers that were in the model today. John,
Bernard mentioned. Sometime in the next couple of months. Can we really expect the borders to open at the same time as we have that sort of thing?
Well, as I say, the Prime Minister will have more to say about the Reconnecting New Zealand program, but one of the things we've been clear all along is that vaccines and boosters give us far more options and choices than we've had previously, and obviously what we know about Omicron is that for a large number of people it will be a mild to moderate style illness. For some it will be more severe. We have to design our approach bearing all of those factors in mind. I'll just finish with John.
Just on Tonga, the humanitarian communication problems there, ministers discussed the situation and what, if any, updates can the government provide this week on support for Tonga and also support for the Tongan expatriate community in New Zealand?
Well, as you know, we've continued to provide support both practically through the Defence Forces deployments up to Tonga, but also through the work we do government to government around the Tongan aid program. If you've got a specific question about part of that, let me know. The relevant ministers continue to talk very regularly with those in Tonga. Thanks, everyone.